All right. Hello, everybody. Good evening, and thank you for coming to our very first Quality Engineering Meetup. Also, thank you for joining online if you are watching us on YouTube. My name is Jirka. I'm here from Productboard. I look after platform engineering, and it is my pleasure to be your host tonight. With me, I have Tony, also from Productboard, Renat from Mews, and Vladimir from DNAnexus. If you will have any questions during the event, you can use the Slido link, which you can see on the TV screen, and we'll be answering the questions from the Slido as we go. And also, if you want to ask any questions and you are sitting with us here in the audience, we have this mic that we can toss around, and you can ask the questions directly. By the way, after the event, please do not leave. Please stick around because we have wonderful food over there in the kitchen. We have beer on tap. And most importantly, we will have the speakers staying with us so you can meet with them and discuss any follow-up questions that you might have. So that's it for the intro. Let us begin. And let's start with a round of introductions. So please, if you can go and tell us a little bit about yourselves. What's your role? What's your background? And make sure that the viewers understand where you're coming from and what's your experience in the quality engineering space.
Hey everybody. So as Jirka said, my name is Tony. I'm from Productboard, and I'm part of also of the engineering platform team. Currently, I lead the developer experience team, but I joined about 4 years ago, and my first mission here at Productboard was to establish the quality assurance team, establish all the processes, and so on. So this topic very close to me to this day.
Hi everyone, my name is Renat, as been said before. I do very similar thing as Tony in Mews. When I started with Mews, I had the same mission. There was only about 5 manual QAs and no processes or very little. And so my mission was to establish it, improve on it. And now I'm switching to more of a platform engineering role. But yeah, that's it.
So hello, my name is Vladimir. I came from DNAnexus. I'm leading the QE team there. I work in testing for more than 12 years, sorry. And my mission there was to take over a very good setup of the QE team and make it grow and scale. So hopefully we are good in that.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for the introductions. Maybe before we dive into the detailed topics about quality engineering, we can establish some common vocabulary. So can you please share what's your view on what quality engineering actually is? And what's the difference between quality engineering and quality assurance?
I guess I'll start since I have the mic. To me, quality assurance is more of like a reactive approach on ensuring the quality. It's sort of, for me at least, maybe some people will argue with me, is going, let's say, out of fashion, or it's more of a approach that was industry standard, and now people are shifting to quality engineering, where there's this understanding where quality shouldn't be ensured close to the end of the life cycle. It should be ensured all throughout, before, during the implementation, and obviously after. There are certain tools that are used for that. I'm sure most of you know it, or all of you know it. But yeah, quality engineering is basically all throughout the development life cycle, and QA is more towards the end. That would be the definition for me.
Well, I think I will start with how I think it started in our company. So we are in the pharma industry, and usually in regulated environment, QA means something different. So I think they just named the QE team QE because it was different than people taking care of documentation. But when I came, I was thinking, what the heck, we should do it as a quality engineering. And on top of what Renat say, I would say that for me, the quality engineering is a lot about the tooling and support of the engineers as well, not just taking care of the quality and planning the quality, but also ensuring that we have the good tools and we make sure that developers know how to use them.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. It's exactly what you guys said. Yeah, like quality engineering is more about having quality embedded into the whole process. I would say it goes from doing customer discovery, customer interviews, being part of the definition of features, work with the engineering team, prepare a strategy for whatever we are building, and yeah, having the great tools to support a good testing pyramid, having a lot of focus on automation and not doing manual work, which you have to repeat every time. So it's purely engineering.
As a follow-up, can you maybe share how quality engineering is done in your specific companies?
So I can start. We actually went through many stages, so try to quickly walk you through it. When I joined, there were about 4 product teams. We built a centralized QA team, and we were QA engineers were assigned to the product teams, typically 2, and they would work with the engineers there. As we grew, we started to have much more product teams. We started to organize ourselves a little bit differently as well. Now we don't have just product teams, we also have tribes, which is typically a group of product teams focusing on a domain. So we had to evolve a little bit as well. Current stage is that we have 2 functions perhaps. One is more focused on the tooling and infrastructure, which lives in the platform tribe. And on the tribe level, on the product side, we have quite a lot of freedom, actually. The tribes or the teams have a lot of freedom to choose how they decide to do quality. And we have all kinds of situations. We have product teams that don't have quality engineers at all. And we have, in some cases, we have a quality engineer for the whole tribe. And in some cases, we have quality engineers dedicated to the product teams. So it's quite flexible.
Thanks. We started quite similarly. When I joined, there was an actual QA team consisting of only QA engineers, and they were kind of testing issues for different product teams. Since then, we've restructured a lot. QA engineers now, or quality engineers, now report directly to the tech lead within cross-functional product teams. And the way that quality is ensured, teams have a lot of freedom, but we have sort of, I guess, a little bit of a weird setup. I like it a lot, but I know not everyone is a fan of that. So we don't really use test management tools. I'm quite against that. We can discuss this after. The way it happens is we try to integrate quality engineers into development process as much as we can. And so testing is part of the pull request review. So pull request is created by developer. There's a level 1, level 2, and then QA spins up an environment, which is a copy of a stable environment. For us, it's develop, plus this feature applied to it. So they test it, and then they either give approval or submit a change request or a comment, stuff like that. And when it gets approved by QA, then it's merged. There's obviously a set of automated tests, API tests, unit tests that is run even before the level 1 checks. So to submit it for level 1, all these tests need to pass, and then QA engineer will take a look at it after the reviews. There's also a platform team called quality team, where it's a team of SDETs, basically maintaining the environment, creating the data for automated tests, maintaining the QA pipelines, this sort of work. I'm sure all of you are familiar. But yeah, why we don't really have test scenarios written besides the basic one, business critical ones. We've thought about this with the CTO, and we decided, okay, if we're going to write the tests in plain English, we might as well write them automated. So one of the reasons why the robot framework tool was chosen is because you can actually write a plain English test, and it will be automated test, basically. So yeah, this kind of works. And it worked for the certifications that we need to provide for the testing. So I guess it's good enough for the controllers. But yeah, thanks.
Okay, so in our company, I think it's, as I said, like twice already, it's regulated. So I think for that business, it's quite common that there is a centralized QE team, right, that takes care of everything and make sure that we are following the SDLC and fulfilling the requirements of the FDA and other agencies. But if I would be able to say how the team works, it actually differs. So we are centralized, but we are really split by the product teams. And we try to provide only a platform how to work. So basically tooling, take care of it, some standardization of the process to ensure the not only the quality but following the rules and the SDLC. But each team actually works different. So we have teams that are testing on feature branches and basically running tests on feature branches and merging to master just after everything is tested. We have teams that test on the stage environment, and we have teams that are using like local virtual environment. So we are centralized, but we work more as a community. What is maybe interesting that on these platforms we have many teams, but we decided to create a testing pool and be more feature oriented than team oriented, which from our perspective provided a much bigger flexibility. We are distributing the work more evenly to the team. There is no one overloaded and there is no one who doesn't have anything to do. And the reason for that as well is that most of the development teams are in US, on the West Coast, which is 9 hours difference. And we felt a little bit, and then if testers were basically embedded in these teams, they suffered a lot because they were alone, and there was quite weak community around them. So now they have the community around. We support each other, and we help them to grow and basically work with the team.
Perfect. It looks like in all cases, the quality engineering is quite distributed, often split between platform and product. So I would be curious how you make sure that knowledge sharing is going on and that everybody's on the same page with regards to the tools to be used and the best practices to be followed.
I guess I'll be starting every time now. So we tried to maintain the guild. That's a renaming we went through quite recently. As I mentioned before when we chatted, we now have starting a staff QA engineer who will actually take care of this more closely. But in general, there is monthly meetings for the guild. And then there is something that one of our quality engineers suggested, and it kind of took off, is a QA coffee that we do every Friday, which is like an informal meeting where you can share the news from your teams. But it's mostly, it kind of was created, or the idea came in during the COVID where everyone was kind of disconnected. So we started joining in onto the call, have a coffee, or sometimes play some weird online game, but just to kind of team build together and share the news. But yeah, there's an official one that is monthly, and then there's an official one that is every week where knowledge can be shared as well, but it's mostly goofing around.
I swear we didn't agree on the answers with Renat. Yeah, it's actually quite similar as well. When we were centralized team, it was much easier to keep the communication flowing and the information being shared as we split the team. And in our case, the quality engineers also started reporting to the managers of the teams they were working with. This became a challenge. And yes, we went through the same process of establishing some rituals to make sure that the knowledge is still shared and that people are sharing those good practices and those learnings that are so valuable. So we do have a QA guild, which has regular meetings. We do have a QA coffee as well. And yeah, even events like this are also part of sharing the knowledge and bringing everybody together.
Well, so we are centralized, so it's much easier to communicate. So I would maybe build on my previous experience when we had some guilds, and it was basically very dependent on the people motivation. So I think you should be glad that you have wonderful team around and everyone is motivated. And I had quite opposite experience to motivate people if they are embedded in the team and have different manager and different goals basically. So for us, how we share, we have every 2 weeks, so bi-weekly, some meeting called QE Huddle. When we share information, we regularly present news on the teams, new technologies we use, and everyone can propose the topic and problem. So we make sure that if someone has some issue and is blocked, that we discuss it. We had a QE coffee actually, but we don't have it anymore. So we try to really meet in the office, not for the QE, just like for the coffee, but just to see each other. And we have some kind of book club every week when we basically have some private time for studying, and we select together some, let's say, Docker course or something, and we just go through it together and try to be better.
I'd be also curious for the QEs, which are embedded in the product teams. What's their exact role? Are they expected to write all the tests for all the functionality that the team is producing, or how they are interfacing with the rest of the team?
It depends. Like as I said earlier, we have quite a lot of flexibility. Teams can have a lot of decision power how they want to do it, but I think if I generalize, it's about bringing the mindset into the team, making sure everybody's thinking about the quality of what we are building, that the feature makes sense for the user, and that it doesn't have bugs, and also that we are taking care of it after we release it. I think that's the main idea. How different teams do it, it really depends. Some quality engineers are more involved, maybe on the technicalities. Some quality engineers spend more time working with the PM and just evangelizing the good practices with the team. So it really varies.
Quite similar, actually. In practice, it's, maybe like three things. So automated tests, obviously, checking the PRs. And there's a thing like reviewing the features, writing acceptance criteria, or kind of things to put your attention to before you start developing. Like make sure that this works because client expects something like this. In theory or ideally, and some QA engineers do that, some don't. It depends usually on seniority. The more senior QA is, they usually affect how the development happens more. And we'd like them to be challenging tech leads and saying, okay, but this has a risk of having this or that. And as they grow more senior, they have that experience and knowledge to tell these things. As well as, I guess some of them turn into more of a SDET role where they actually start understanding and like try their hand in fixing some bugs, for example, when they can't get their developer to prioritize it. We had these things as well, and we encourage that. We don't demand this, it's not a responsibility, but if they do want to do that, we'd like to help them to improve in that area. Plus, I guess, the whole, shift of responsibilities. We're trying to eliminate manual testing almost completely. That's, I guess, one of our transitions, but we're not there yet. But in the future, we'd like to minimize it onto the ad hoc level, or like exploratory ad hoc, as in where tech lead may say like, this is very important, I'd like a person to look into it, not just automated tests, then yes. But we're trying to move away completely from manual testing. But yeah, that's more or less it.
I think we have some embedded engineers. We have some teams in Prague. So actually the work is slightly different, and it depends on the team and on the ratio we have for testers and developers in the team. So sometimes they focus purely on the test ops side. So basically serving the team, educating them in the testing, bringing the tools, bringing the pipelines, and make everything easier for them. If there are enough engineers, they try to help them with building continuous integration pipelines, building good checks on PRs, and basically taking care of the most of the automation and reviewing on branches. So it really depends.
Renat touched an interesting topic, which is the ratio between automated and manual tests. So, Vladimir, Tony, what's your point of view? What's the ideal ratio between these?
Well, so I think from our perspective, we have 100% of all tests automated, but we test everything manually first, or it depends. We try to manual at the same time. We don't use any actually robot framework or any other frameworks with normal language. We actually used BDD. When I came to the company, I just deleted everything, and we started with PyTest and very simple stuff. So we really try to do stuff as simple as possible, and we really try to hire good engineers to write the code itself, and then try to educate them rather in the testing. So from my perspective, the ratio should be 100% of stuff should be tested, but before it goes to production, or if it's being tested, it should be like 50-50, right?
Yeah, I think you should try to automate everything you can reasonably automate. Every time you have something that can be tested only manually, it means that every single time you touch that, you need to test it again. You just keep repeating and spend the time over and over and over. So whatever you can reasonably automate, and I say reasonably because there are things that really cannot be tested or don't make sense, but otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, there are certain things that I guess doesn't make sense to automate if they change too frequently. But the ratio I was going for is like not the coverage wise, but the approach wise. I guess the 80% of things will be tested automatically, and 15 to 20 again, those things where it will happen eventually that the tech lead will say, okay, I don't trust all the automated tests. It's too important. Can you please take a look? So this would account, or exploratory manual test, this would account to like 15, 20% of the whole testing. Again, it's not coverage, it's just more ratio of people testing automated way or manual way. But yeah, accounting for that, I would say 15, 20 manual, and then the rest will probably be good enough checked automatically.
We have some great questions on the Slido, so let's look at the first one. How do you measure quality on a project, on one team? What metrics do you use? What are the best practices?
Okay, we use DORA metrics. So I guess the most important for us was change failure rate. There are other ones, but they're more, I guess, towards the DevOps. But yeah, as that quality team, we look at the change failure rate, and we obviously monitor bugs coming in from the production. And there are certain error budgets that teams have, where if they exceed them, they'll have to focus on solving all their issues rather than on the technological roadmap. It's quite recent change. But yeah, now there's like endpoint performance, failure rate, and then there's bugs as well. All these metrics are now taking place where if you exceed those, you'll have to focus on something else, well, on quality rather than on your roadmap. But yeah, DORA metrics, I would say quality-wise is the most telling one.
Yeah, it's always tricky topic on when we are talking about quality and measuring the success, because when everything is perfect, they have almost no data, right? It just works. It's perhaps a bit too late in the cycle, but for me, the ultimate indicator is how many bugs are coming in. That's going to tell you how is your product. And also, I like to look at the trends. Are we getting more bugs? That's reason for concern. Are we happy with the current quality and the number of bugs coming in is stable? That's probably okay. Yeah.
Well, I used to have a lot of metrics. It never helped actually at the end. With the quality of the product, we were checking it, and I was more and more desperate by the results. But no, just we try to measure as few as possible, to be honest, because I think it's very nice to check. So we have like bugs from production and this stuff. We have code coverage on UI only, basically. So we are checking and comparing into some heat maps. This is the solution we are trying to build now. So to just discover if we are testing what customer is using properly, and if there is something that customer doesn't use, we don't test it by 100 tests, right? So this is, I think, more the biggest metrics that we do now. So as few as possible, but something that can actually be the game changer.
By the way, if you are here in the audience and if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I will toss around the microphone and ask the speakers. Nothing? Nobody? Come on.
So I have a question regarding the automation, because Renat was actually mentioning exploratory testing, which is something that I think everyone does, right? Mostly on the UI and others. So what is basically maybe your view on or if it's even possible to automate this kind of testing, basically, the exploratory testing?
It would be good if I'm wrong, but I don't think it is. That's the whole point of exploratory testing. You just kind of try to use it and, in a weird ways, the app. But I think there's a thing like popping out now called autonomous testing, which is like, I think it's from, well, I know it's from Tesena. Hi, Marcel, he's watching. And that might in the future, it's in the beginnings, the prototyping, but I think in the future it might replace it, where it basically kind of creates the test for you where it thinks you need more of them, but I'm not too versed on how it works. But for me now, exploratory cannot be automated. But if anyone can prove me wrong, I'll be happy, and I'll use your advice.
Yeah, that's it. You cannot really automate exploratory testing. It's very hard to replace a human for that kind of mindset. So yeah, but maybe there is a right time to do it and a right time not to do it. Probably it's very valuable when you have something new and you want to really spend and like go through it all. But then, you know, once you're not touching something, you don't need to do it all the time. So that you can probably rely on the automation from that point on.
Okay. Next, we have a follow-up question to one of the topics that we discussed initially. The question is, QE, what are you actually engineering? What is the result and the deliverables if that is engineering?
I think the main thing is the process and the mindset. You're engineering, you know, quality into the team. It's like, you know, it's like a creative work. You need to really adjust to the situation. What is your team building? How are the people's personalities? And you need to work with that to make sure the process is, you know, it yields the results you need. You can also think about engineering from the automation perspective. So, you know, like focus a lot on automating things, focus on the right shape of the testing pyramid, make sure you have tons of unit tests and you don't have like a huge suite of end-to-end tests. Yeah, the tools, you know, make it as easy as possible for people to write tests in the first place. If it's super hard and the code is not testable, you're not going to get the automation. So that's the engineering part as well. Like make sure the code is testable, make sure the tools are good, make sure the processors are correct. And you know that whatever you're doing works for the product you're building. Is not some generic solution that should work for everything. That's usually not the best solution if it's too generic.
Yeah. To me, quality engineering it's like the explanation is in the name. It's the same engineering that you do, but with the quality in mind, like as a first thing. So the idea is to promote quality, not just a thing that quality engineering team does, but as a whole development team does. When they think about how to implement this feature, when they plan it, when they write it down, all of this should be with the quality in mind first. And you might not notice that it works because everything is fine, right? You will actually notice it because the let's say change failure rate will be very low, under the 10%, let's say, or your customers are very happy. They're like, oh, it's so stable. Maybe you will know it by that time, but you will definitely know if it doesn't work. The customers will be unhappy. You'll get flooded with blockers from the production, and you know, at a certain point, you lose kind of credibility. So thinking like, okay, it seems fine, we don't need it. You don't need to wait till the point where it's too late. But yeah, quality engineering to me personally, and I think a lot of you will agree, is that it's engineering the way you do it. Is just paying a lot more attention to delivering quality engineering than just engineering products.
Well, when I joined my first corporate, came to the US and there were guys sitting all over 60, I would say, and I was saying, yeah, but we are on the same board. We are both doing testing. And the response was, you are not doing testing. We are doing testing. You are doing test engineering. And that is something completely different. So for me, the test engineering was because we started with the automation, we starting to break the tool and make the readership, and actually didn't ask someone in the company to bring it for us. So for me, the quality engineering is that developer goes and writes a code, right? And he knows that there should be a code review, and he has enough tools for basically doing the code review and stop the pull request when the code review is not done. He knows that he needs to write the unit tests. And when he fulfills everything, he pushes the button, everything gets tested and gets to the production right with green light, and there is no issue. And this is actually very complex stuff, as you all might know. And you need a quality engineering because there are a lot of tools needed. And if you imagine, I think every one of you knows DevOps, right? So there is this 8, and you test in all the stages that are there, if you imagine it, in all of them. And in all of them, there must be quality. And without quality engineering, you cannot ensure it because you will not have tooling. So it's not just the testing, but tooling itself as well, for me.
Okay, next question is about testing mobile apps, if you have them, which is obviously not applicable to Productboard. But if you have mobile apps, how do you test them? Can you share frameworks or technology that you use for that purpose?
That's actually a painful question. So we do have mobile apps, and currently we have a very, let's say, a basic set of tests for them. We use Dart testing framework because nothing else can test these apps. But yeah, we're in the process of, let's say, making a framework for that. So I guess I'll go on a little bit of a journey. So now, thanks to one of our very bright engineer, have a quality environment dedicated to us, and we're trying to use this as a backend for our apps so we can test and we populate it with data. So we're in the process of that. In the meantime, we wrote some tests within the project, but obviously you can't test it extensively unless you populate it with all the data that needed for complex cases. Other than that, obviously there's manual testing involved as well on devices. But yeah, when we automatically test, we simulate the devices. We don't test on real devices automatically, if that was the question as well.
So that's the next step. Are you building a testing farm, mobile devices?
No, we'll probably use something like browser stack or something like this. But yeah, so far it's locally.
Hey. I guess DNAnexus doesn't have mobile apps. So we can move to the next one, which is how do you balance the company standards and agreed best practices and the freedom of the individual product teams to decide what frameworks they want to use, what approaches do they want to take?
So most of the things or most of the practices that are in place in Mews are actually sort of strong suggestions. The teams can opt out or opt in. There are certain things that are mandated, obviously. But for example, let's say feature flags or candidate deployments. Teams can choose to use them or not. We obviously strongly recommend them to use it. But not everyone uses them. Or let's say type of agile development they're doing. Teams can choose if they want to work in Scrum or Kanban or some mix of it. So a lot of these practices that the tech leadership tries to instill are more like strong suggestions. And if it works for the team that they don't do that, it's completely fine. There's sprint reviews or stand-ups. Stand-ups are done differently in almost every team. For someone, it works that they make a thread in a Slack channel. Someone actually wants to have a call. Someone tries to have a stand-up once in a week and they do it in the office. They all come in for one day and stuff like that. There's a lot of freedom in this. And I feel like you cannot mandate these things because things that work for, let's say, a big-sized team or a small-sized team, like my team of SDETs are quite small. There's no point in stand-ups where we actually have a virtual office that we can join in every day. So what's the point of actually having another meeting where it's just stand-up, right? Or when it's a smaller team, you're kind of aware of things that people are doing. And it would rather annoy them, I guess, to kind of join in these meetings. But yeah, balancing, as I said, I think at least half or even more than half of the things that are, let's say, set or the practices, they are more like strong suggestions rather than mandated things that you as a team have to do. But yeah, I think in the Mews we give a lot of freedom to the teams to work the way they want, and I think it's one of the things they actually appreciate. Where they don't have to question it. If they really don't like it, they will try it another way, and if it works for them, then what's the problem?
Yeah, I already covered. We have tribes and teams that are fully independent, and there's a lot of freedom to decide on the processes. So I will not go there. But on the technical side, how we do things is the paved path. So again, we don't enforce anything on anybody, but whatever is supported by the platform team, it's always going to be the easiest way to do it. In our case, for example, we have Cypress. If you need to test something on the UI, if you choose Cypress, a lot of things are already handled. You don't need to worry about how do you log into the application and how do you change feature flags, because we build those features and it's pretty easy. If you choose to use a different tool, then you need to live with the cost of doing that. You're going to have to implement all those things from scratch, and you need to make it work with CI yourself. And if you have a problem, you're on your own. So the paved path is our solution, and it works pretty well. Most teams just choose to use what's easier. They don't want to spend time on dealing with the complexity themselves.
I don't like a lot of rules actually. So because I think they tied you up somewhere. So we have SDLC process. It's written there, and you have to follow it, but it's very high level. I believe that there should be just gates rather than some rules. So basically, you should verify that they fulfilled everything you need at the end, but the way should be theirs. We have some framework in our company that most of people use, but sometimes we have testers coming and saying that they want to try something different. So we let them, because if we ask them to use what we use, we will never improve, right? And we will still be rolling the big stone. And actually, it's paid off almost all the time. So when they came and tried something new, it was usually successful, and we implemented it back and make stuff easier. So I think rules are okay, but it should be very based on the individuals and individual approaches, and we should provide people like opportunity to express themselves.
Is there some absolute must-have in your companies with regards to the quality engineering space? Something all teams need to follow?
Yes, every PR has to be tested. There are exceptions where, let's say, the PR that changes very little in the back end, and it's tested by one of the reviewers. We have a label for this in GitHub. But yeah, it has to be looked at by QA. We're obviously trying to move away because so that it's more streamlined. But yeah, I guess that's the rule. And there has to be a coverage at least of the basic, let's say, business critical workflows. Automated tests have to be there. Like it's almost like a critical issue, or let's say a blocker, when a team sprouts out and their business critical workflows are not covered by any tests. Then there's an issue created, which is like a post-mortem, which they have like I think 2 weeks to a month to solve. So they have to prioritize it, and at least this an absolute minimum has to be covered, and then they can build on that.
Well, we have requirements for all the features or user stories, and we create requirements. So every release, we have to test all these requirements, which is mandatory. If they are not passing, we have a problem, right? Because customers are watching. So I think for us, this is the biggest rule, to test everything that is there and maintain it to make it up to date, because we have links to the test there. So if you go there, you always see how the requirement is tested, where it is, where it is sitting in the Git. So it's very hard to maintain it. We try to automate it, but this is, I think, the biggest rule in our company.
Yeah, in our case is the PR code reviews, of course, everything that gets checked by CI. So styling, linting, all the tests need to pass. So that's obvious, that's given. You cannot even merge a PR without doing that. We don't have such rule that everything has to be tested by someone else, because some things are just trivial, and we are okay with that. Maybe one thing that's also common to all the teams is meeting the bug SLOs, bug fixing SLOs. So we have those metrics, we know how many bugs are coming in, we know the priorities and so on. And then we have defined SLOs for all the teams, which are the same. So if you have a high priority issue, needs to be fixed in a certain amount of days and so on. And again, how the teams choose to deal with that is up to them, but they are expected to meet the SLOs, which are common to everyone.
Yeah, I kind of forgot to mention as well. All the checks have to pass and all the reviews have to be done before it's actually allowed to merge. But yeah, thankfully Tony said that, so I remembered.
Awesome. Next question. In agile world, is it still good to have a tool to write down test cases with step and having it necessary to keep updating them? Or is it better to just leave the test in the code?
Well, I guess I kind of said my opinion on that. So yeah, I was never a fan of writing down the manual tests. I understand that business critical workflows have to be actually written down in case it happens that the QA that works for this team is away and someone is stepping in for him, and they need to understand the product quickly and what needs to be absolutely, like, they need to understand what they need to check so that it absolutely surely works. So this business critical workflows. But other than that, for me, it's a lot of, I guess, wasted time. Maybe it's a little bit controversial, but once your manual test base grows so much that you literally need a test analyst to just maintain them, to me, it feels that we could be doing better than this. So yeah, that's why I would kind of decided that if it's a written English test, it's a robot framework test and it's an automated test. But yeah, and as I said, I'm not really the biggest fan of test management tools. So we don't have like neither tests written down in just manual way and nor the tool that maintains them, I guess.
I think we stepped back a little bit in this. So after some experience, we started to write actually not test steps, but some kind of scenarios for each new feature to be reviewed, because the issue we had, we don't write any steps or something in our test because we use coding and we use PyTest and Cypress. We focus a lot on the documentation. So during the code review, if you don't understand any piece, you always ask the creator of the PR to add the description so everyone knows it. But we had the problem that we returned the PRs many times because there was something missing in the test. And then PM had a look on it, and said, this is missing. And the feature was on production for 2 weeks, and we were still working on the PR. It was tested, of course, manually, but not all the cases. So now we really focus on at least some written scenarios. We get them approved, and then at the end, we basically save the time from our perspective.
Yeah, my experience with those manually documented tests is that they cost more than they bring value. Over time, they get stale. We forget to update them, and by the time we need them, they are not useful anymore. So definitely, if it can be code, it should be code. And yeah, maybe the manual testing should be reserved maybe for that exploratory testing in some cases.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to expand a little bit. My whole idea, and I'm going to be challenged now in Mews on this with the new staff QA engineer, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, if you have time to write and maintain a manual written test, let's say, then you probably could use this time to write an automated one, right? Like, and it's going to be like, you'll be able to run it more times, let's say, rather than you following through once. And then the documentation should still be there with some, critical points that needs to be tested. But yeah, I'm personally quite against of maintaining a lot of manual tests.
I will maybe challenge you a little bit. So what happened if you wrote something that shouldn't be there? So you spent time on the automation of some test case and they said, this is useless, this doesn't test anything, and you spend 2 days on that. If you don't prepare upfront?
Well, you should prepare upfront, and this to me can happen with the manually written test as well, right? Someone prepared the test and the other person starts testing. It's like, okay, this does not follow the workflow. I don't really know what's happening here. So I guess it's the risk you're running either way, and it's probably happening from time to time where the test is written. But at least when you write an automated test, by not even like, even if it doesn't explicitly check something, by spinning up the environment test, like going through this, it's at least goes through this workflow and shows, okay, at least this workflow works, rather than, let's say, maybe, it doesn't explicitly test, but by existing, it already tests, right? It uses the app, it simulates the behavior. And you can run it repeatedly rather than a person like, okay, he's stuck on this, doesn't make sense, and that's it. And this basically completely useless. With the automated test, I would say, if you fix it once, it's going to work more times. It's true with the manual as well, but I feel like manual test is one-time use, and the automated one, you can actually repeat it. And the problem, I guess, with the maintaining a small fleet of these tests is fine. But again, I'm talking about having hundreds or thousands of these tests, and maintaining them is such a big investment of time where you say, okay, there has to be a better way. And usually it is automating more and documenting just business critical workflows. But if someone has a completely different opinion, I'm more than welcome. We can discuss this.
Maybe one last thought on the original question. Even if you are writing the manual test cases, I think it's probably overkill to document every single step as you go through the app. It's probably enough to have a checklist of things that the human can easily process. It's more like, I need to make sure these like 3 or 4 things work and call it a day, because just documenting every single step, unless you're gonna outsource your manual testing and you really need to give that level of guidance, it's probably a waste of time.
And this is more or less solved in our company, where we put like acceptance criteria under the issue, where like it's usually the steps that absolutely have to work within this. Like it has to comply by this to be considered done, let's say. And it's more often than not done by a QA engineer.
By the way, we touched the topic of business critical workflows a couple of times. I'd be curious, from your experience, what's the ideal shape of the testing pyramid? And generally, what's your point of view on end-to-end tests? How many is too many? How much you should invest in end-to-end tests versus different parts of the testing pyramid?
I'll start. It's funny actually, because in Mews, when we say end-to-end test, we mean automated UI test, because we use them mostly for these things. I don't think you can have too many unless they duplicate themselves, or you wrote them in a very inefficient way where like they're 90% the same, and then only one step changes. So you can probably combine them into one and make it and reduce some code, let's say. But the ratio, I would say, as much as you can. I don't think you're going to hurt yourself by having too many tests. The question comes in when they invest enough time on this, and that's more, I guess, up to a tech lead within the teams. Same as for them and for the product manager to define what is critical for them to make sure that it works, rather than, for example, me dictating, oh, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this. Within the teams, they usually know better, much better, what is business critical for them. They have data on what gets, what part of, let's say, their product gets used more, and they need to cover this. And obviously, historically, you would have data where you find like a cluster of bugs, like this thing breaks more often than not, so we probably should cover this more extensively, focus on that. So yeah, ratio-wise, I don't think there's clear ratio for me. As much as you can with sense, like with let's say with the common sense. Obviously, like trying to automate everything, you're probably gonna go down the rabbit hole, and then there will be too much mess. But yeah, automate as much as you can. Business critical workflows to me are always left to a technical leader, QA, and PM to discuss. I feel like they have much better insight than someone who is not within the team, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm big fan of the testing pyramid myself. So I think you should write as few end-to-end tests as you can, and you should write as many unit tests as you can, and integration tests in the middle. When you're at the bottom of the pyramid, unit tests are very cheap from all perspectives. They are cheap to write, they are cheap to maintain, and they are very cheap to run. So you should start from there and cover everything you can at that level. And when you run out of options, you go one level higher and you create integration tests, and you do again the same process. You cover everything you can until you run out of options, and then eventually you need to go up to end-to-end tests. End-to-end tests, in my opinion, are very expensive. So it's the opposite of the unit tests. They are expensive to write, they are expensive to maintain, and they are expensive to run, and they are typically very flaky as well. So even the value is questionable, because if you have flaky tests, then people just learn to ignore them, and the value is not there at that point. I speak from experience here. When I joined Productboard, I came here. I'm tasked with establishing quality processes and team, and I start to talk to all the developers, and hey, how is our coverage of unit tests and integration tests? And they're like, are you mad? Like, we have nothing. We are a startup and we are moving fast. So the first thing I did was, how do I get some coverage quickly? And end-to-end tests are very exciting at that point, because you write one test and you get a ton of coverage. And then we fell into the trap of writing too many. And that's a problem we are still dealing until today. They are still flaky. We have too many. And we are still in the process of moving things down.
I'm actually curious. Do you use Selenium or?
We use Cypress.
Okay. No, it was that flaky. But we used to have the same problem. But we moved to Playwright. We stopped using Selenium, and magically, like, flakiness disappeared. Like it happens from time to time, but like, you know, I would consider it magic. It's not Selenium, of course not. But yeah.
I think Cypress and Playwright are pretty similar in architecture. So I think the issue for us is just the complexity of our application. We do a lot of animations and a lot of things for delight, making the application do some magical things, and it makes it a bit more unpredictable. And because of that, it tends to be a bit more flaky.
Okay. We also actually, because previously we were running on the same. Sorry, I'm hijacking this. We used to run like all the tests at the same time against one environment, and they would crisscross with each other and obviously break, and you know, things weren't there. But we kind of like split that as well. We built environments in batches. Let's say for this team, there's this environment.
You name one challenge with end-to-end tests, and we probably had to deal with it at some point. So we did the same. We got a lot of stability from doing that, and you know, we just run the tests across many environments so they don't interfere with each other. But it's still problematic in some cases.
Okay, maybe we'll get there. Maybe we won't.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'll keep the mic for a bit longer. Regarding the integration tests, they're actually written by our developers. And when I had the discussion with our CTO, he wanted it to keep with the developers, mostly because you want to have sense of responsibility from them as well, making them write their own tests. And I think whenever they create an endpoint or something, they're required actually to cover it with tests. You cannot just have it. Some tests should be there, and the integration tests were there when I came. There were no UI automated tests. Maybe we had a kind of a different, a little bit idea, but yeah. Now I think we can never catch them because they had a huge head start with the amount of tests. But yeah, but we use automated UI tests mainly to cover end-to-end tests, like to create the whole. We basically try to simulate user behavior, like creating a reservation or stuff like this. It's not just checking like a very small part.
So maybe just to finish, we do still, so we went very recently through the process of just doing a huge cleanup. We had over 200 end-to-end tests after multiple stages of trying to reduce the number. And a few weeks ago, we decided, hey, let's just go wild on it and let's cut it drastically. And we went all the way down to 38 tests is what we have right now. Yeah, so we are sticking to those 38, and those 38, yeah, they are focused on those really most critical business use cases, and we'll probably keep them around for that. And we might have to make the decision. Yeah, we start to build more features and we start to have more tests, so we might have to go through it again in the future.
Was it in DNAnexus?
Well, I wanted to ask who is the magic man who made the problems with the Selenium disappear with Playwright from the team here, because I suppose it was someone here, right? So it was not magically, I suppose. I would say from our perspective, we don't have much end-to-end tests. I've never seen automation pyramid working because I maybe never seen more unit tests than the rest of the automated tests, definitely end-to-end tests. I think for us, we try to really break down the functionalities and test it in smaller pieces, test it across different data centers we have on AWS. And for us, a lot of tests are very expensive. So we really try to find the balance between the price and the usefulness of the test and the added value. But I would say we might have like 10 end-to-end tests, and the platform is very big, and I think that we don't have so much troubles with some end-to-end flows.
You have any questions here from the audience? Oh, nice. Oops. That was close.
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
We put it closer?
Yeah. Okay. Hi. So I am Adil. I work also as a quality engineer. So yeah, I wanted to ask. Basically, I think when some challenges that a lot of quality engineers face initially when they start developing some automation is that they want to add as much coverage as they can and so on. That's the demand from the organization. But then after a while, you find out that okay, tests start to and for various reasons, I don't know, environment is slow. Because
Put it closer, please.
okay. Like for various reasons, environment is slow, or there is some workaround, some bug is not fixed. So you then start to add some retries and so on. And slowly, I feel that after a while, the goal of automation is not to actually show you the state of the application, but it is to actually pass, because otherwise you risk becoming like a running joke, like, oh, automation failed, like what else is new, And and I feel like, once it starts going in this direction, then automation kind of loses value, and it becomes something that, it's green, it's good, it's okay, but it doesn't tell us much, of the state of the application. So I guess my question would be like, how do you get out of this kind of vicious cycle, or where do you draw the line?
We certainly had this problem when our tests were flaky. It used to piss off everyone because like they would just fail, and more times than not, it was some flakiness or something like that. But once we solved the flakiness, actually people started to be appreciative, and quite recently there was a big kudos from one of our tech leads where the automated tests found an absolutely obscure bug where I think, I don't know actually who wrote this test, but whoever it was, big kudos. Oh, sad. And it was full-blown kudos. It was like they would never actually caught that if there was no test. And once you solve the flakiness issue, I think there's a lot of, assurance towards developers where they like to see the green. They want to, because the tests, the automated tests are actually mandatory on the pull request. Like if it's failing, unless it's a proven that it's just a test and the fix is coming, and most of the times it's actually can come within the same PR, because if it's a front-end pull request, we now merge repositories where end-to-end tests are part of the front-end repository, so they can actually update the test within the PR where they change some components. Once you solve the flakiness, once people are not annoyed by constant false positives, then the mindset starts to shift where they actually appreciate having that there, because they know more often than not when it fails, something is wrong. And the thing is, they're also now mandatory within the delivery pipeline. So even if your developers are, for some reason, maybe a little bit don't want to wait, they say like, oh, it takes too much time or something like this, then you have to explain to them like, okay, you don't want to wait now for half an hour, you'll have to wait on the delivery pipeline for an hour, or you'll have to deal with the blocker that could have easily been caught by this. We thankfully don't have like, at least I haven't met developers that will be thinking like this, but I know it's happening. And it's mostly about shifting the mindset. But before you actually start doing that, you have to solve the problems in-house. Flakiness, maybe a bad design of the tests where they're always passing and they're not actually checking anything. They're just like clicking through the app and that's it. But that's not much of a help, and it's a lot of waste of a lot of computing power, let's say, or you're paying for a Zora store. But yeah, writing the test properly and solving the flakiness, making them as stable as possible, be it with the retries. Like we took an idea that was implemented in Google where the test is failed only if it fails 3 times in a row. So if it fails, it automatically reruns just that just that test. And then again, and on the 3rd time, if it fails, okay, that's a failed test. Because many things can happen, right? Connection broke off, something. You want to retry. You want to make sure it's an actual fail of the test, not just some random event. It does help a lot. Sometimes it, obviously prolongs the time that the pipeline runs, but it's worth it because you will lose way more time investigating why it failed, and in half an hour, you will know, oh, it actually works. You want to avoid that. So maybe some retries, invest into planning before you write the automated test. Make sure it actually checks a lot of good things, a lot of pain points. And obviously, first thing you need to do to not antagonize people is solve the flakiness. because this will antagonize most of the people, and then you'll lose buy-in in them quite quickly.
I like to think as tests like an insurance policy. You don't care about it until you actually need it. So the day it saves your ass, usually the faith in those tests comes back.
There someone who followed the green run policy only, who literally fixing the tests as they are failing? Is there someone doing that? I think this is the way from hell. We actually follow this policy. I think Peter will agree because he spends, I think he's watching online. So Peter, I know that you spend a lot of time with the maintenance. I think we have very good support in the company. So if there is something failing, we say that we are not going to release, and we are not going to release. So it happens maybe, I think it's 3 weeks ago, when there was a lot of changes and we were not sure that all the tests and all the failures are not issues, and we needed time to, so we deliver every week to production, and we were not sure. So basically the company stopped the release because we cannot afford to deliver something that doesn't work, and at the end there was some issue. So everyone was happy. But as I said, we spent a lot of time on maintenance, but we really follow the green run policy. So if there is something failing, we really take it as a priority and fix it. Otherwise, you will go down to the hole and falling, and it will pile up.
Do we have any other questions? And we can take more from the slide.
After your last throw, probably no one will ask.
I promise I won't hurt you. Okay, so moving on. Do you think that the staff QEs should only do the quality engineering, or should they also help and drive the developers to improve their tests and dev testing?
I would think yes as well, but it's more of a, like, it's not just staff QE or QA that has to do that. It's a job of every quality engineering professional to promote quality within their teams. It's not someone else's like exact responsibility. It's everyone. Like you, the more senior you become, obviously, if a person just starting his journey in that career, then they don't feel like they can influence a lot. But as they grow within the product, as they gain knowledge, as they gain experience, their input is very valuable. Like we have QA engineers who actually join, and they're asked to join meetings with the customers because they have such a good knowledge of system that they actually like help developers to build, in a way that will satisfy them from a quality standpoint. But it comes with the seniority. But I do feel like it's job of everyone, and it doesn't even have to be in QA. Like tech leads have to promote quality as well. But to answer the question specifically, yes.
Yeah, like for such a role, I would have the expectation that it's someone that's going to create a sense of community and, drive the adoption by conversion, not by force. It's about, like bringing the quality engineers together, but also the engineers do meetups, do trainings, do workshops, make it fun, make it exciting, and, like really promote it by excitement, not by force.
I'm actually a big fan of test ops approach to take care of the whole operations around the testing by ourselves. So from my perspective, I think the quality starts with the tooling, as I was saying, and you have to make it so simple that developers enjoy to use it. So we use Behave. If you ask developer to write a test in Behave, they will hang themselves maybe. But if you ask them to write them in Python that they use daily for the integration test, they are okay with that. So I think this is the first step. We help them with all the pipelines. We built all the Dockers there. I think in our company, how it goes, for example, if developers are creating new Dockers, they are sending the PRs to the testing team, not to DevOps team, for example, which is quite interesting from my perspective. And we review their pipelines even for the development. So I think we have very nice communication, and they appreciate the help. And if they appreciate the help we are giving them, they want to help us as well. So it's like bi-directional help. So I think the biggest help is motivation of people to help you, because they know they will get something back from you.
That's actually a quite good point of using the tools that are, if you want to promote like automation, let's say, beyond just quality engineers, you have to like give somewhere, make a common ground. And that's one of the things that I'm looking into now, and I'm waiting for our staff QA to return from vacation to talk with him about this again, because our backend developers use C# a lot. And there's a framework which is very similar to Robot Framework. I forgot the name actually, but it was suggested to me by one of the developers. And it's also written in English, but the back end of it, let's say, or the code behind it is in C#. And that would be very, I guess, good for them and to promote, because we already have some developers who are writing end-to-end tests just to like kind of facilitate that within their teams. But yeah, I guess giving some ground or finding a common tool that is comfortable for both parties is one of the things that you can use to facilitate that. But yeah, I do agree on that point a lot.
May I ask the audience? So, who is doing automation here? Just raise your hand. A lot of people. And who takes care of the testing pipelines by yourself? So, are you doing them, or you just rely on someone else? Who is maintaining it? About the half of the people. And who is, if you are using Docker or something on some virtualization, who is building scratch? So
Defeated look.
so I think this is, from my perspective, this is a very good step how to motivate even testers, because testing is not the most enjoyable, I think, part of our work. It's the infrastructure and the automation itself. I think most of you enjoy the writing code more than the manual testing, right? I suppose, at least. So this is the way how I try to motivate our people as well.
Touch the topic of staff QEs versus different levels of QEs. So we have a follow-up question. How do you define the QE levels to be objective? Do you have some sort of skill matrix, or how does it work in your organizations?
What you asked. So we have a career framework, let's say, with a category. It's like a role-playing game, like a RPG. It's called, I think. I play RPGs, so I know. So I think it's taken from Etsy's framework, if I'm not lying. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting notes, so I didn't mess up here. It's obviously adapted towards our needs, but there's like 5 main categories, and there's subcategories within that. I'm hearing, I know. And you basically, when you go through performance reviews, you kind of evaluate it on these sub-levels, and there's scores you get, and then there's obviously job grades. I think our job grades are public on our GitHub, so you all can check how, and actually our whole career framework with the categories and how we score people, everything is available to you guys. Check out our shameless promotion plug. Check out our GitHub, it's all there. But yeah, so the question stood obviously the same, right? How do you make it fair? How do you give it structure? And our CTO came up with this. It went through a couple of revisions to kind of tailor it towards more to our needs. But I think in general, people are more happy with it. And in the company, I think we were the first, I mean tech, were the first who implemented this. And I am a big fan of that. I like to know what are my goals. I like to know, okay, I'm kind of lacking in this regard, and I should focus on this specific area. Let's say there's like 5 main categories. And you grow as from like a beginner towards a leading expert, which is like, I think beginner is easy to satisfy. And then 5, like 3 is a senior for us. 4 is like you kind of affect how Mews as a whole works. So you're company-wide influence. And then 5 is industry-wide. Like certain, like even participations like this are expected of you. You're supposed to improve, like not only within the company, but in general, as a professional that influences the community. So 5 is very hard to get. Even 4 is very hard to get. So as long as you like lay out these expectations at the start, and the person knows, okay, I'm starting this career framework. This is where we begin. This is what is expected, more or less. And it also gives you an idea on what to focus yourselves. Once you have your initial scores, you're like, okay, I'm kind of good at this, and I'm maybe a little lacking at that, and you know what you can focus on in the next half a year. So yeah, I guess we use a standardized framework to ensure that everyone is like kind of graded fairly.
Is your ladder the same for developers and for quality engineers, or do you have different?
Like the framework itself?
Like the expectations.
For the QA, like depends. So SDETs have the same as developers, so same career. And for QA, product QA engineers, it's a little bit different. But the framework itself, like the ETSIS framework used, is the same across the.
Yeah, I actually read it. It's pretty cool. And
Thanks.
kudos for making it public. I think that's a good move. Cool. Yeah, so in our case, it's not that different. We also have a framework. It's not as fun. We don't have RPG topic in it. But yeah, we do have a career ladder. In our case, it's the same for everybody on an engineering role. On the lower levels, the expectations are, autonomy, and, you're expected to grow to the next level within a time frame. As you go higher, you become senior. You just need to start having impact, maybe not just on your team, but also on the people around you. And the higher you go, the expectations grow as well. So when you reach level of staff, you need to operate minimum at the tribe level, ideally even across the whole company, and influence maybe the strategy for the whole QE across the board.
I think in our company is strange because even CTO writes a code on daily basis, and our directors, all of them writes code on daily basis. So we have a framework as well, of course. We have some descriptions on what you should do and how you should behave to be a senior, how you should behave, and what is expected from a principal. People are being regularly promoted, which is, I think, nice. But the way how we do it in the QE team mostly is that we ask people where they want to grow and what they want to do, and we don't set them goals. We ask them what they want to do, and we try to support them. So I have several people that want to move outside of the QE team. They want to be DevOps engineers and UI developers. So basically, I know that I should rather keep them in the team, but we help them to grow to different roles even. So they are happy at the end because they will leave anyway, right? The company, if they will not be happy, and it's still better to keep the people there on different positions than this. So we really focus on the how people feel and what they want to achieve, than having some preset of experience they have to achieve.
Maybe a related topic. What is your mindset while hiring new QEs into the team? Are you looking more at the current hard skills, the technical skills, or more the talent or potential, talking about mid-senior principal level?
Character and potential, I would say. I always say the hard skills we can teach, the personality we cannot change. And this is more like, if obviously certain hard skills need to be there. Like I'm not going to hire a super junior person to the senior position, but if it's here and there, maybe not as strong. It's if a person is talented and you can see they know a lot and they try to educate themselves, then obviously they will learn that your specific needs. It will take a couple of weeks, but he will be there. But if you see, okay, this person is amazing hard skill wise, but then not communicative, or maybe quite, let's say, hostile, maybe it's a strong word, but you get the idea, then there's no point hiring, because it's only going to bring dissatisfaction within the team. There will be problems. Yes, he has or she has hard skills, but then the team atmosphere is actually very, very important to me. And I often would say that, okay, you may not be quite at the level that we expect, but if you have time, you can read up on this, or we can teach you how to do these things. What is important for me is actually desire to learn, and the attitude that they take. And I'm not overseeing the hiring of product QAs anymore, but when I was, I would always make sure that they are communicative, that they're actually proactive within the interview, because they have to be in my vision. They have to be within the team. They cannot just sit there and send me the issues and I'll test them and nothing. I want them to be proactive. I want them to talk to developers. I want them to questioning things. I want them to learn. So yeah, to me, like I don't know if you call them soft skills. I would say proactive skills, and character is way more important than hard skills. That said, they need to have some skills as well, hard skills.
Well, we are quite picky about the technical skills, but the personal as well. So for us, it has to be some balance. It's always team decision, so the team votes actually always. So we have usually about 3 rounds and different targeting. So from soft skills, testing, coding, and this stuff, and then we vote. Sometimes it's hard. We had one candidate, for example, that every woman in the team loved and every man hated. And it was 50-50 and it was hard to decide sometimes. So definitely he was a good coder. But but yeah, we are really looking on some balance. Well, not for me, but
It's been a while since I was involved in hiring quality engineers, but generally back then we were looking obviously for the hard skill. We tend to focus on automation, so it's needed to some extent. But also super important is things that Renat already mentioned. It's the cultural fit, it's the growth mindset, it's the potential. I would always favor someone with tremendous potential over someone that already has the experience and we maybe are not so excited about. And then also, of course, we need to take into consideration what exactly the person is going to do. So which team is this person joining, and what is this team building? And in some cases, the hard skill is more necessary, and in some cases, the soft skill is more valuable.
And I might, I guess, add to that. We also, like me at least, I often like prefer to hire from within the company because we have this whole career track made, and people from our technical support or support like to start with the QA engineering. So we always keep that door open, and we now actually have a full road tried. So we had a person who joined from support now doing SDET, and we had the SDET who switched to being a backend developer. So we have this career framework where they improve if they want to, I guess, go towards the technical stuff. They can actually end up being a backend developer or front end if they want. But we work with the backend in our SDET team, so it's very hard to switch to being a front-end developer. But I guess this as well, like when you see someone you kind of chose is the wrong word, but I guess said yes to on the interview, and then they make such a progress, you feel such a reward. You're like, okay, I was right about choosing this person. Maybe at the time they didn't have this set of skills, but they showed that they actually learned. And maybe in between like a second or third round, they actually looked up what we're using and they asked questions specifically. And that was like, okay, that's amazing actually that you looked up everything and you went through our GitHub and so on and so forth. That tells a lot about the person. You also get people who like have no idea what you're doing on the interview. But yeah, I guess also providing them with the abilities to growth would, I guess, invite more people who are willing to do that, the growth mindset. And I feel like I'm being challenged again.
I definitely agree. I have to mention once I was hiring a candidate, and the candidate was very motivated person with very few technical skills, not really good. But the candidate was so motivated, I really want to hire the candidate, right? And the candidate accepted different offer, so we tried to beat it a little bit, and we won at the end. And because I felt that so patient person, and it paid off at the end. But if I would judge only on the technical skills, I wouldn't hire. But sometimes you have the chemistry and you feel the passion in the person, and you want to get it because you can learn the hard skills, right?
Perfect. I believe we have time for one last question. So who is it going to be? Okay.
I'm a front-end developer, so I'm not like testing. So let's not test the mic and your throwing skills. Okay. So I was intended to ask a technical question about reducing flakiness, more APIs in Cypress, and so on. But since we are delving into these people skills management questions, I have a different question. Currently at our startup, I am responsible for maintaining Cypress tests, writing them, developing the pipeline.
But we do have a dedicated QA team. However, they are they are doing mainly manual testing. But we want them to start writing automated tests. But we are sort of coming against their reluctance to do it for several reasons we are not sure about. So my question is whether we should try and push them to move to automated testing, or rather we should just take advantage of their skills, knowledge about the app and about writing and coming up with test cases, and just keep the automated testing for developers.
It's a very similar situation. When I joined Mews, there was a team of, I think, 5 QA engineers who only did manual testing. And I think you should, but it should be done in the right way. If you just tell them, go learn and start automating, that's not going to work. They're going to get discouraged. You want to get someone who actually is very experienced in that, who will set up the infrastructure, who will teach them, and then it will work. I think they should, because you cannot maintain, you can maintain a startup on the manual testing. Once you grow, and I'm sure you're planning to grow, you will need automation. Otherwise, you'll have to hire as many manual testers as developers, basically. But it should be done right. There needs to be a senior person who understands how it works, who is very good in his technical skills or her technical skills. And you should start with that. Before you start automating, you need to get a person who is kind of your cultural fit, knows the technologies you're working with, and can come up with a framework that works exactly for you. Because like you can get a senior who is only working with Cypress his whole life or her whole life. And you know, whilst they are good at technical knowledge and architecture, they might not be familiar with the tools for you, and that will hinder them. You want to find someone who is actually very familiar with your tools and is senior. And then start transitioning your QA engineers into automation, because they will have someone to ask every time they have a question, they're not sure, and they will feel like, okay, they're being rewarded for learning, rather than just, hey, there's a tutorial and video, there's a video course, just take care of it. It's not going to work, at least not from my experience.
Yeah, I would say similar. If you can hire someone to, to kick off and basically offload this work to, it helps. Someone with experience, as Renat said, I would agree. But maybe that's not an option if you cannot hire, if you cannot get the headcount. In that case, maybe what I would recommend is to try to make it exciting. It's same I said earlier with the staff role. It's not about pushing people to do something. It's more about, making the excitement, maybe do a few workshops, show them it can be fun, and maybe it will really spark some interest. And then from there, it could grow.
I would say that people like to follow. So I usually say, if you need people to do something, just show them the example. I agree with both of you. I agree with Renat that you really need someone who will design it properly from beginning, because otherwise you can very fastly end up in a big hole, of flaky tests, and it will be very expensive to get from it. But maybe try to do it by yourself. Try to show them, that, hey, I've automated this. See how fast it is, see how I can mock the data automatically, how I can catch the request, and scale it, like, because if I worked with people that started with automation, we usually gave them simple tasks that they were able to do. So prepare me, please take here and prepare me some mocking for backend response or something in Cypress or in some framework, and they started to enjoy it, because people are usually scared of what it can happen. But if you start small and grow, it can be the way how to motivate the people, because they start to be curious and they want to know more.
Maybe one thing you need to be careful need to be mindful is that, assuming that those people are doing mostly manual testing, they probably don't have a strong engineer or writing code background. So even if you're successful to get them excited and you start to slowly offload that work, it's probably going to take a while until you are able to really fully transfer that.
Udemy has discounts very often. So start a book club, give them hour every week, and just buy them for $12 some Cypress training or Playwright, and maybe it will help.
I just want to respond. Thanks, guys, for your insightful and personal experience regarding this question. I myself think that the best approach for us is really to have someone to lead, to show how it's going. And yes, I agree with you what you basically said. That there must be someone to lead and to show how is it, how to do it and to pass on the experience and the knowledge.
Thanks.
Perfect. So I'm afraid we are out of time. So big thanks for coming here. Big thanks for watching online. Most importantly, big thanks for asking all the great questions. We still have a huge list of questions to go through on the Slido, so I think we should organize a next QE meetup and follow up on all of them. Maybe you can ask Renat in the kitchen later on why he hates those tools so much.
Someone from here, then you can ask me. I'll stay around for a while.
As I said at the beginning, we have some food over there. We have some drinks, beer on the tap. If you are watching online, you're on your own. You need to cook your own dinner, grab your own drinks. Sorry for that. Come next time. I hope we will see you at one of the upcoming Productboard meetups. Having said that, we want to improve. We want to learn what we can do better next time. So we will send a questionnaire for feedback to all of you once we are done, and we'd be really glad if you can fill it in so that we can continue improving how we organize those meetups and how we run them. So once again, thank you all. Big thanks to all the speakers for their great insights and great answers. And enjoy the rest of the evening.